Now I have the challenge of following that, as I am going to be hosting our next session. But let me just show you a short video to set the scene conversation.
Take a place on Earth, any place, and look closer. Communities are evolving. Ecosystems are transforming. Individuals are creating. By 2050, 7 out of 10 of us will live in cities, hyper-connected megacities, with populations surpassing those of entire nations. Pollution, overuse of natural resources, congestion, commuting, all impacting the quality of our lives. What would you do if we could start fresh? What would you do with a blank slate? How would you build communities while protecting the environment? How would you use technology for good? Today, NEOM is turning these ideas into reality. Unbound by legacy thinking or infrastructure, NEOM is a region of Saudi Arabia that's being built from the ground up. Each of NEOM's main geographic zones has distinct characteristics that enhance the entire project's ecosystem. We are pioneering new and innovative approaches in our 14 key sectors, each designed to push the limits of what's possible. NEOM is transforming businesses, where direct access to global markets, globally competitive laws, and a strong backing by investors facilitate ease of doing business. NEOM is revolutionizing livability, where roads, cars, and emissions are a thing of the past, and people's health and well-being are prioritized over infrastructure. NEOM is redefining conservation. With 95% of our land protected for nature, we're healing our own ecosystem and keeping sustainability as a central principle. We're building a home for innovators, dreamers, and doers. We're building a home for you. NEOM is no longer just a vision. NEOM is now.
Great video, and it sets the scene beautifully for the conversation I am about to have. So please, would you welcome onto stage CEO of The Line, Mr. Dennis Hickey. It's great to have you with us, Dennis. Come and grab a seat. In the next 30 minutes, you and I are going to be having a conversation about this extraordinary project, The Line. Is there anyone in this room who hasn't already heard of The Line? Something that I think is a concept you're definitely all aware of. But Dennis, you're here really to take us into that world, to share a bit more detail and I guess prove that it's really coming to life, which is very, very exciting. So can you start by telling us about the vision? What is this thing called The Line? What's the vision for it? You know, how does that align with the broader Saudi 2030 vision? Oh, are we on?
I think that's my error. So firstly, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I think, as Tony Blair talked about, the 2030 vision for Saudi Arabia is remarkable. And when people ask me and they want to know about The Line, I say, to understand The Line, you first need to understand NEOM. And then to understand NEOM, you need to understand the kingdom and what's happening under the 2030 vision. And it is a remarkable document that, for those people who have read it, you know, in its conciseness, its direction, and its simplicity, the direction for the kingdom is very clearly laid out by His Royal Highness. It is all about modernising, educating, giving people opportunities, the kingdom engaging with the world, being innovative in terms of so many aspects. And NEOM forms part of that. So NEOM was launched 6 years ago at FAI, and that is really anchored into the 2030 vision of what the kingdom is to become. So NEOM is really a region that is anchored on 14 sectors. And it is about an economy. It's not a giga project as a real estate project. It's actually creating an economy that's going to last for, decades and centuries to come as a key part of the kingdom. And then the line becomes a logical extension of that, and then says, well, okay, if you're going to create a region that's focused on innovation, targeting the great minds, targeting, sectors that the kingdom thinks will be, key in the transformation of the globe over the coming decades, well, then what should the city be and what should the expression of that be? And that's really what the line falls into becoming an example and a cornerstone of the 2030 vision.
I mean, it seems like such a futuristic vision. It seems like something almost out of some movie that we've all seen, and the few visualizations that we've seen of the line are just mind-blowing with its revolutionary ideas, with its availability, with its livability. But tell me why they're needed. Why are you thinking so differently? Why does the world need cities like the line when we've got London and Paris and New York?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think we talked about it before. If you look at what's happened since the Industrial Revolution, if you go into the mid-1800s, which is the emergence of the big global cities. So if you go back into 1850, the population of London was just under 2 million people. The population of New York City was under 500,000 people. The population of Tokyo and Paris was under 1 million people. The Industrial Revolution came and you saw the emergence of what we call the major cities. And that has been remarkable in all of the prosperity and innovation that's come with that. But in reality, what has come is the expense of society, environment, nature, livability. And if you look at the stats, as we said, it's almost 70% of the world is going to be living in major cities in the next 20 years. And so the only model we have for major cities is basically a terra firma-based model, which basically consumes the land as the cities grow. And so what the line is trying to do is to break that mold and to say there has to be a better way. Because if our only solution is to create another sprawling city, I've just come from COP in Dubai, and you look at it, it's a remarkable achievement. It's a big sprawling city, and it's got the same hallmarks that Los Angeles has. And if that's the only blueprint the world has to create cities as we urbanize, then I think that's a problem.
Well, absolutely, and they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and
Something like
expecting a different result, and I suppose we simply cannot continue to build and construct cities in the same way. So my understanding is that the line is the very first city that's going to combine these elements of both vertical living but also linear design.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of that? What does that look like? What does that even mean?
Yeah, to understand that, and you probably go back a couple of years, like His Royal Highness is very involved in the project, and he's the chairman of the line board, and we meet regularly and we talk about everything, and he is the personal driver of the vision of the line. When NEOM was created, and when there was a conversation about the capital city, or the major city of NEOM, there were lots of thoughts around, let's create another traditional city. And in reality, we then turned around and said, no, he wanted to have a line that spread through the regions of NEOM. And the linear city is not new, if you think about it. Manhattan Island, where I've lived for a decade, is effectively a linear city. It is 22 kilometres long, 3.1 kilometres wide at its widest point, and it houses nearly 2 million people who live on that island, and it functions very well. It happens to be a linear city. So we've taken the same approach looking at the line and saying, well, how do you create a linear city that gives you the economies of infrastructure and the avoidance of all of the other issues that come with a circular-based city. So you can actually house all your infrastructure in a line. It's a bigger upfront cost, but then as the city grows, you can tap in and get economies of scale as the city grows. And what this video shows is, if you take the view of Manhattan, what we're doing is we are folding Manhattan up. And we're creating Fifth Avenue, Sixth Avenue, Seventh Avenue vertically in a linear city, rather than creating on terra firma. So it's a fascinating concept, and the line is not a building, it is a city and a framework, and within that, it gives you the ability to eliminate all of the infrastructure that goes with servicing cars and transports, etc. So if you take a 50, 30, 50-year view, the paybacks on this are incredibly powerful. It's just a big upfront investment, as most pioneering things are. I'm sure the first electric vehicles were very pioneering and costly. And so that's really what we're trying to do.
And I love in this visualization just seeing how much of the natural land gets reclaimed. That's so heartwarming to see that so visually represented, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think for people who live, in cities, whether it's in London around Hyde Park or Manhattan around Central Park, where I'm fortunate enough to live, we're kind of cities around a park. Whereas what the line is a city in a park. Yeah. And so we're creating, equality of access to that nature, equality of access to that environment, whether it's enhanced landscapes, whether it's the nature reserves. You are basically, within the city, you have immediate access to parklands and infrastructure that basically are normally the domain of people who can afford to live near those pockets in cities. And so, it revolutionizes the way people will live.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous. It's, like I said, it's very heartwarming to see a really innovative solution. But this is what? Vision, futuristic, pie in the sky, a big dream and ambition on paper? I mean, what's the actual progress to date, Dennis?
You look at his vision, it's an aspiration. As we said, we wanted to really push the envelope. Yeah. And His Royal Highness was the key driver of that. So pushing us to a 500-metre high, the line originally started out as 3 kilometres wide with a series of buildings. And he said that wasn't bold enough. We need to go bolder. And so His Royal Highness, again, pushed us further and pushed the team and to really wanting to change the world and wanting to change the way this works. So we are still working through those. We are designing this and building this at the same time. We have a lot of civil construction going on. Our first phase of the line will include what's called a hidden marina. The hidden marina will be the biggest marina in the world. It's 2.5 kilometres wide and 1.3 kilometres deep. We are deep in excavation. We've started piling. We're dewatering. So if you went to the line, there is an enormous amount of activity happening in the preparation for all of the foundations and the and the civil works that will start to be coming out.
I mean, for me, that instantly raises the question about how in the world, from a construction point of view, a project like this is actually going to be delivered. I mean, you must be using new technologies, new innovations, new methods. Can you talk to us about the construction side of it?
Yeah, the construction side is both challenging and exciting at the same time. Just the quantum of material that we were using is significant. And we are very focused on 2 key elements. One is, how do we create more of a sustainable footprint in the creation? So what are we doing around decarbonisation? What are we doing around embedded carbon reductions? What are we doing about using materials that are much more sustainable, environmental, as well as modern methods of construction? So how do we do more off-site construction? How do you take things away from traditional construction and start moving those into warehouses, into factories, that your construction becomes more of an assembly than it does become of a wet construction methodology that most people here would be used to. That has huge benefits when it comes to safety, performance, quality, all of the things that go with that. So, the construction is fascinating, and I think what we offer is scale.
Yeah.
So, and there are a lot of people here who've, prefabrication, industrialisation, modern methods of construction have been around for a long time, and there is a long graveyard of failed attempts in that. Because what you need is the scale to be able to deliver that. And I think what NEOM does and what the line does is give the ecosystem of the construction sector scale to drive that innovation. And so we are pioneering and partnering with some incredible companies around new technologies, precast cores, which aren't really done if you look at high-rise construction, 3D modules for hotels, for residential, for retail, for all of the civic assets we do. So yeah, so the construction side is incredibly challenging, but incredibly exciting.
Yeah, well, I can see you light up when you talk about it. It's such a privilege to work on something of this scale and innovation. And you've absolutely, I think, shown us that it's happening. It's no longer just a plan on paper. There is construction going on. And you just alluded to something called the Hidden Marina.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is that's the first phase that's going to be complete. Can you paint a picture for us all?
Yeah, we haven't formally unveiled what the Hidden Marina precinct will be, but we have said that the first phase of the line will be open by 2030.
2030?
2030.
That's 6 years' time.
Yep.
That's
7
very
years' time,
soon.
by the end
Seven
of 2030,
years,
so
yeah.
we won't count. But the good thing about the 2030 vision strategy is it doesn't say 2032. It says very clearly says 2030,
Yeah.
and His Highness reminds us of that all the time. So that's what we're focused on. We're making great momentum. Nabi Al-Sar, the CEO of NEOM, is in charge of the whole of NEOM and doing a remarkable job bringing all of the sectors, working with the base economy to make sure that everything comes together across all of the regions and the sectors. But yeah, the first precinct of the line, which we call phase 1 of the line, is really focused around our Hidden Marina. And it will be, in the precinct somewhere in the order of between 2 to 3 kilometres long, including the Hidden Marina. You're talking somewhere, in the vicinity of 20 million square metres. Those sort of, as I said, we're working through all those details, but we'll announce that in due course.
Yeah, I think, like you say, this idea that it's a city rather than a building is really interesting. We can probably cut the video now just so it doesn't keep on looping and people don't think that we're building something in Manhattan, because it was really just to illustrate the perspective of the verticality of the city. Talk to me about people, because livability is something that I've heard mentioned a lot when it comes to this incredible project. What will life be like there? I mean, can you conceptualize that for us? Because it's not something I can necessarily get my head around just from seeing a rendering.
Yeah, livability is a key driver of everything we do. And, people talk about livability, but there's no common language around, well, what defines livability? Yeah. Is livability in Riyadh compared to London, compared to, Los Angeles? How do we benchmark those factors? What are people looking for? And ultimately, we define livability as, people and communities. It's about how do people and communities operate, function, come together, and prosper, both from, opportunity in terms of to educate, to get smarter, opportunity from health, well-being, collective thinking. So the whole genesis of this is kind of redefining what communities are. And if I go back to the analogy I talked before about the Industrial Revolution, pre the Industrial Revolution, cities were based on small communities. They were walkable communities before the car, and people would cluster in communities and would be very kind of local within their area, would live and shop and operate in strong communities. The motor vehicle and the Industrial Revolution changed that. And what we want to do is try to bring that element back. And so we are focusing around mobility. We're focusing around health and well-being. We're focusing around education. We're focusing around environment. How do you live in harmony with the environment and nature, not in competition with it? And many cities are in competition with environment and nature. So, we're very focused on that, and that's a key driver of all of the things that we do. So living in the line, as I said, it's a city. It's not a building, and we have a canyon in between. So you live in parts of the city, and you have an internalized canyon that is kind of fit for the microclimate of the region. And then what you're able to do is access all of your things in daily needs within like 5 minutes walking. Again, not dissimilar to an inner London or an inner New York where you've got things at your fingertips. But then when you want to engage with nature and you want to engage with landscapes and you want to be active, it's at your doorstep. So you kind of live in and out. People get an impression that you just live in the line. You don't. It's actually where you house and where you work, but you actually have the mix of the two.
I love that idea of the 5-minute city, because we hear a lot about the 15-minute city at the moment.
Yeah.
So what might somebody living in the line find within 5 minutes of their doorstep? I mean, is that their place of work? Is it their health centre? Or what are you going to find there?
We define that as your daily needs.
Yeah.
And really it's around restaurants, it's around education, it's around healthcare, it's around daily retail. It will be around other aspects that you need in your daily life. People will always commute to, whether it's social events or friends or whether it's work. So there'll always be some commuting, but that'll be a choice thing. And as I said, living in Manhattan, I was talking to somebody earlier. Well, I've lived in Manhattan for a decade. I never owned a car and was able to get everything in my fingertips. So I kind of think, that is the analogy, and whether it's in London, etc., is the analogy of what life will be like in the line.
Yeah. No cars, right?
There are 0 cars.
So
there are cars in Neom. There are no cars in the line.
And so commuting is going to be through other transportation methods
Yeah.
and sustainable means of doing that, I understand.
The line will be the very first ever green city in terms of being powered by total renewable energy. The whole city will be powered by wind, solar, other forms of renewable-based energy. And it'll be the very first smart cognitive city. I mean, people have precincts within cities, but the total city will be done with all of those things in mind.
I mean, revolutionary indeed. And you just touched there on the idea of being the cognitive city, even more than a smart city. So what does the technology, the mobility offering look like at the line? What is technology enabling to enhance people's experience and the livability of that city?
Yeah, and I think, we talked a little bit before from other panelists about where technology is going. And I think it's moving very fast. And what AI does, what robotics will enable, what hologram technology, security, facial recognition, digitization of many things. So what we're doing is we're building up that the city has a platform that can access all of that technology. And so you've got layers of smart cities. The very first smart city layer is really making sure that the infrastructure of the city can talk to itself. And it can be smart, and it can be predictive, and it can start to interpret the climate. It can interpret traffic, security, mobility, all of the things that great cities can basically do. And then we can push that to people who live there, which gives you access to living information. The cognitive side is really when we become more predictive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really understanding, predicting, as I said, whether it's security, whether it's transport, whether it's retailing, whether it's how you view information, bringing IT hubs into the home and the workplace. So that's the area that we're really pushing into hard.
Amazing, and I love that technology is going to be running through the heart of it, because as everyone has said on stage today, we've got to embrace it because it's a huge part of this revolution we're living through. And I like the idea as well of this commutability, the mobility piece. So we've mentioned no cars, but I've heard about something called the spine.
Yeah.
Tell me about the spine. What's that?
Yeah, so the spine runs next to the line. It just sits next to it. And that basically houses all of the infrastructure. So if you think about like a massive box that has high-speed rail, local GMT rail, freight rail, all of your infrastructure, your water, your services, any other forms of transport that may have to do with logistics, etc. And it sits next to the line. And so we're building that up front. And as I said, so as the line evolves, its ability to tap into that becomes highly beneficial to the future stages of the line.
I mean, your excitement is palpable. I mean, I'm getting excited just thinking about this revolutionary new city. But let's talk a little bit about legacy, because obviously this isn't being built for just tomorrow or for the next 5 years. This is trying to potentially show what's possible. Is that part of its legacy? What else is the legacy of the line?
Well, I think His Royal Highness was very clear in saying that the line and NEOM should be impactful for the world.
Yeah.
Yes, it's for the kingdom. Yes, it's for the people in Saudi Arabia to have opportunity to learn, to be at the forefront of technology, education, healthcare, all of those things. But it's also for the world to lean in and to look at what we're doing here and to learn. So what we want to do is export those learnings.
Yeah.
We want to export technology. We want the things that we create here is a give back. So how do we actually show other countries, other people, how you can actually challenge your normal thinking and what things are possible when you actually start to break the mold?
Do you think the line will be replicated elsewhere, or do you think it's so unique in its situation in Saudi Arabia with the landscape, or do you think it's just more the technologies that might get replicated elsewhere?
I think the interpretation of the line from our perspective will be a wait and see in terms of whether that's replicated or not. But I think the thinking behind the line, I think the thinking about creating a city that's in harmony with nature and the environment. I think the thinking about trying to say, well, how do you design out a lot of aspects of cities that actually break down communities? I think how do you create walkable, livable cities? I think that is going to be the legacy.
Yeah.
And our interpretation of 500 by 200 will be very unique. It'll be like nothing the world has ever seen, and it will be spectacular, and it will be incredible. And I can tell you now, the people who are excited about this, the people who lean into this the most, are the kids.
Wow.
Are the people who are under 30, the people I speak to who say, I just got a car from the airport here today. Not one part of that journey was enjoyable. Right? And so when you actually do that on your normal day, why do we do the things we do? Because we always do it, because there is no other alternative in a big city.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of, look at a new way of doing that, living in a city that is environmentally conscious from the get-go, the youth of the world, not only in the region and out, are intoxicated by what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so they will be the real early adapters and the real people who push the envelope.
They're the driving force into the future of
Something
what
like that.
life's going to look like, huh?
Yeah.
So for me, one thing I was left with, having chatted to you and watched some of the video footage that's available, is this idea as well that it's going to be built with so much soul, with poetry and music and beauty, and not just let's construct for the sake of constructing. So that's what I'm left with. Is there something for you that you're most excited about that really encapsulates the heart of what the line is and is going to be?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really about, and people talk about the vibe or whatever technology, but it's the feel of the city.
Yeah.
I often say, we talk about creating great places. What makes great places are people.
Yeah.
There are lots of architectural solutions, but it's the people inside the place that make it. And I think that the way we're designing it, the anchor assets we're putting in, museums, libraries, we're building a football arena at 350 metres in the air. It'll be housing a capacity of 45 to 50,000. Some of these things are going to be pieces of art, and they are pieces of beauty. And I think that it will be an incredible place to live. I think it will challenge the norm. It won't be for everybody, but it's definitely going to be for a larger cohort every day as it comes on.
Well, I'm so grateful that you've been with us here today to really bring this extraordinary revolutionary vision to life. I only have one last question, which is, where's the waiting list? How do I sign up?
Not yet. That's okay. We'll do that. But look, as I said, I think the line has captivated the world. And everybody, I got into a cab in India and somebody said to me, something came up about work and, I've heard of the line. And wherever you go, people have heard of it. I think that the thing we want to move to next is to understand more about it, what it's about. Let's get inside. Let's show you what it's like to live there. Let's give you greater insight into livability. Let's give you greater insight into the functionality, because the initial reaction when you see it is to stand back and say, well, that seems crazy. Once you understand more and you lean in, that's the next opportunity for us.
Well, I'm very grateful that you've been here to paint that picture, to really show and demonstrate the credibility of what's a very real project. It is happening. It's definitely being worked on by the best and the brightest across the world. And yeah, thank you for bringing it to life for all of us. And I cannot wait to see its evolution and progress. So thank you so much, Dennis.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Please can we appreciate Dennis's contribution. Dennis
Thank
Hickey, CEO of The Line, and he'll be around hopefully to chat during the coffee breaks.
Thank you.